So this is an expose that was covering all of the stuff that's been happening behind the scenes, and it's very telling. This is how this article starts. This past September, a group of Marvel creatives, including studio chief Kevin Feige, assembled in Palm Springs for the studio's annual retreat. Most years, the vibe would have been confident, even cocky, given how the premier superhero brand owned by Disney since 2009 has remade the entertainment business in its image. But this occasion was angst-ridden. Everyone at Marvel was reeling from a series of disappointments on screen, a legal scandal involving one of its biggest stars, and questions about the viability of the studio's ambitious strategy to extend the brand beyond movies into streaming. And they said the most pressing issue to be discussed at the retreat was what to do about Jonathan Majors, who was poised to carry the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but instead is headed to a high-profile trial in New York later this month on domestic violence charges. So Jonathan Majors' character as Kang was the new Thanos, the next big villain. So the trial has still yet to work out. It's obviously put things on hold. So regardless of the outcome of the trial, everything's up in the air right now and everyone's panicking. They had all this next phase. And honestly, I don't even think they had a sure plan, but this has just been a vague plan of how they were going to involve Kang. So this was the next phase of its interlocking slate of sequels, spin-offs, and series around Major's villainous character, Kang the Conqueror. And I wonder if it's the actual next phase. I actually don't know what phase we're in right now. Is it phase 4 or phase 5? I can't even keep track. I know like the previous phase was the one riddled with flops. But that actually kind of puts it in perspective because the writer of this article is saying, oh, normally they'd be all just high and mighty, pretty proud of themselves for what they've built in the MCU, but now they're angst-ridden. I honestly think it's their own fault. There's no question about it. They put themselves in this position. So at this gathering in Palm Springs, executive discussed backup plans, including pivoting to another comic book adversary like Doctor Doom. The writer of this article says that making any shift would carry its own headaches because Majors was already a big presence in the MCU, including, as they put it, the scene-stealing antagonist in February's Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. And he has been positioned as the franchise's next big thing in this season of Loki, particularly in the finale, which is set to air November 9th, and will set up Kang as the titular star of a fifth Avengers film in 2026. That's a long ways away, by the way. So the way things worked before, they had a plan to begin with. Starting out, they had this entire studio dedicated to making the Avengers, having their individual stories, and working on how these would connect to each other to lead up to the Team Up Avengers film, which would conclude that phase. And before, they were coming out with 1 to 2 films a year. After Iron Man, they kept coming out with 1 to 2 films a year every year. And it was like over almost 30 films. That was the entirety of the Infinity Saga. You're not going to get that because you're not following that same formula. Now you've got this formula where most of your installments to these phases are on streaming. And most of these shows, people aren't watching. Or they have watched and were disappointed and didn't watch the next thing. So I was actually intrigued by WandaVision, and I was intrigued by Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Both disappointments, both just didn't land at all. And they introduced things that really didn't matter. Where was White Vision? Where did he go? We haven't seen him since. Another thing, like I was saying with Ghost and the Ant-Man and the Wasp movie, they just have these characters that they bring out that they just don't do anything with. So what's the point of bringing them out? What's the point of doing that? So I was disappointed in WandaVision, disappointed in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and just disappointment after disappointment. Then people just get tired of it. This isn't superhero fatigue. Like I was saying before, there was like almost 30 films that made up the Infinity Saga, and most of them came out like 1 to 2 films a year every year since 2008. Quite spectacular, honestly, when you think about it. And honestly, at the time, I knew this could never be repeated. This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And I was hoping they would reboot it. That just, okay, this is ending. This is done. Reboot the universe, I guess, and just start with something new. Because they just acquired X-Men as well as Fantastic Four. They had those things. Just start with something new. A new base. A new foundation. You don't have to redo the Avengers storylines again, but start somewhere new with X-Men, and most people wanted a Fantastic Four. They wanted a great Fantastic Four film. They wanted Doctor Doom done well. This wasn't superhero fatigue, which they like to throw around now. They just think, oh, it's just too much content. And this article does bring that out later. But no, it's just bad story fatigue. I mean, at Endgame, you basically ended it because you didn't have the Avengers anymore. So I can't believe that they actually thought that they could continue without the Avengers, without Iron Man, without Captain America, without Black Widow, and Thor doing his own thing. Like, what did you really foresee happening? And not only that, I didn't like it at the time either. The blip, I didn't like that. It was way too confusing, and it was such a world-altering event. It wasn't just the world-altering event when half the population just disappearing, but also having them come back after 5 years, have the population come back. Like, obviously that's gonna majorly disrupt all infrastructure on the planet. They didn't really address the fact that this would have had consequences as well, to have not just to have them disappearing, but after 5 years have them reappearing in an instant. Definitely would have caused chaos, but they just didn't really want to think about it. So I didn't think that was a good idea. You've done something so enormous and so climactic that it should have just ended there. Should have just ended there, and they should have just gone back to just having the singular superhero movies. But if they did Fantastic Four, they could do that well. They acquired Fantastic Four, they acquired X-Men, and they haven't done anything with them except the Quicksilver appearance in WandaVision. They've just been sitting on it. They've had it for years. So an insider, or one top deal maker who has seen the final Loki episode, said that Marvel is truly blank with the whole Kang angle, and they haven't had an opportunity to rewrite until very recently because of the WGA strike, the writer strike. But I don't see a path to how they move forward with him. I mean, now that the writer strike is over, I mean, there's still the fallout from the trial, and obviously it's going to put things on hold, and they don't want things to be on hold. They want to continue with their content, assembly line of content.